Let's draw and color these patchwork shapes, or rocks as my daughter calls them. So I've got a pencil, mixed media paper, and acrylic markers. That's my coloring tool of choice. You could use a different coloring tool if you prefer. Before I begin, I like to take a couple breaths, center myself. I'll feel the seat, the paper. It's just nice to be here, where you are. And now draw in your shapes. These do look like rocks. So they're imperfect circles or ovals. You could go full out with the blob. Now inside each shape, I'm going to draw some lines and just let that be kind of random. They can connect to each other, but we're building out that patchwork-like effect. So they're different size shapes within the shapes now. And the more lines you make, the more shapes you'll have to color in. Perhaps depending on the mood, you might want smaller shapes and more to color, or you'll leave it more open. We're done with the pencil. I'll set that aside. And now we begin the coloring part of the process. We will spend most of our time in the coloring phase today. By the way, from start to finish, this one took me about 45 minutes. So if you don't have that much time, you can do one or two shapes. You can use a smaller piece of paper. You could do one large shape. And you could also just break up this session into little mini sessions. So whether you have 5 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour or more, you can make this work for you. Now the coloring part of the process is really nice for dropping into flow state. And you can do simple patterns or just color all the shapes in solid. I say experiment. Let yourself explore. If you're in the mood, you might just be in the mood to do something really simple, something you've done before. And when we do these exercises in our sketchbook, we know that we're not attached to the outcome. We're taking the time to notice if we're judging ourselves during any part of the process, and if our thoughts start to wander about what we have to do during the day, or maybe any worries, or if we're thinking about the past, just take that minute to notice and bring yourself back to what's happening on the paper. All my shapes are colored in. Now I'm moving into some like zendoodling, adding a little bit of detail. I'm gonna stick with simple dots, lines. By adding some details to the top, we're adding some texture. And then I'm gonna come in and trace around my shapes. I'm using gray, just so it's not as harsh as black, but you can use any color you want for the outline part of this process. Take it nice and slow. It's nice to sync your breath to this part of the process. As you move slowly, tracing your shapes, you can deepen your inhales and exhales. I'm also going to trace the lines inside each shape. Again, just moving nice and slow, being really present with the mark making. And then for the final step, grabbing my white acrylic marker, and to give it sort of that like stitched effect, just making little tiny dashes all across my gray lines. By ending the process this way, it just gives me this sense of completion. It feels really satisfying to do this, but then also to see that textured stitch-like effect at the end. Thank you for joining me.